Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda, and please welcome to our Operation Freedom platform, WeThePeopleProcessing.com. You know, are you tired of being threatened to be canceled just because you have a company focused on liberty and freedom? Well, worry no more, folks. WeThePeopleProcessing.com is your go-to merchant services, freedom-based company to provide business service payment solutions. We the People Processing provides their clients a cancel culture-free platform which is domestically based. They provide competitive rates, no contracts with next-day funding, a fully vetted and like-minded financial infrastructure, and full support for integrations, implementation, and e-commerce efforts. Bottom line, WeThePeopleProcessing.com focuses on defending your company's free market growth, values, and future. Check them out at www.WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Once you're on the site, enter in password Operation Freedom or call 855-499-2024. That's WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Then, when on the website, enter Operation Freedom as your password or call 855-499-2024. My next guest has been a long-standing member of our Freedom family, Daniel Briggman. You know, Daniel is an individual who saw an issue developing in our country and around the world. And he decided to not just talk the talk, but to walk the walk. And he created, I believe, the best food and water storage company on the planet, Numanna, Numanna, Numanna.com. And I have to say, when Dan did this, there were people that he had known for many years before that who said, Dan, what are you doing? Food is plentiful. We're never going to have an issue in our country. Well, there might be some issues around the world, but never in the United States for the food supply, that storable food or water supply, storable water will be needed. Oh, maybe occasionally when there is a hurricane or something, but never on a grand scale. And this is what happens when you are ahead of the curve. When you are ahead of the curve, you take a tremendous amount of arrows from the front. You also take a fair number of arrows from the back, which is much harder than the arrows from the front. But rather than pack it in, because Dan Briggman is a study, if you will, or an example in a study in perseverance and dedication and sacrifice. There are many people, when they are confronted with negativity, when they are ahead of the curve, they back off. They just say, you know what, it's not worth it. But Dan did not do that. And every American and every person of the world, frankly, benefits for Dan Briggman's perseverance, dedication, and sacrifice. And in addition to his company, he's a fantastic author. He wrote a book, Forever 1776, and boy, do we need to channel 1776 as far as perseverance and dedication and sacrifice. Numanna.com and Forever1776.com. It's my honor to welcome back my friend and your friend and our country's friend and the world's friend, Dan Briggman. Dan, welcome back to the Operation Freedom Show and platform.
Wow, Dave, that was quite an introduction. It is. Thank you very much, and it's always a pleasure to be with you and your audience. I hope your audience understands how important that you are. Great to be with you.
So, Dan, you saw something years ago, and you were, as I mentioned in your intro, you were chastised is too mellow of a word, but in some cases demonized for what you saw coming down the road. So here we are, Dan. We're now in 2022. We got, somebody called me this week and told me that in LA, diesel fuel in downtown LA was selling for $10 a gallon. I mean, and these are the trucks that carry our food supply. You know, Dan, we are, and this isn't to scare anybody, it's just the truth. What you predicted years ago, many years ago, is happening right now.
For over a decade, Numanna's been in business, and like you said, it was a genesis of my family. We saw a concern with the world and uneasiness in the world coming out of the 2008, 2009, whatever you want to call that, the crash, whatever you want to call that. And we saw where this was going and where we felt like at the time where it was inevitably going. Time has gone on. I've been in the industry. We went literally from doing this in our basement, my wife and I, to now we're a national brand competing with the biggest boys that are out there. And then we've made a niche and we've made a name for ourselves, and now we're one of the national brands. And all through this time, not only is the business side and helping people and the different variety of food storages that we have and the water and all these things interesting to me, the geopolitical dynamics that go along with food. You know, people may not put those two things together, but being in this business, you really put them together and you really be aware. And as you know, I was a radio show host for a while too. So all these things kind of mix together. For the better part of a year on your show, maybe a little more, somewhere around there, I started really heavily telling people what I thought. I don't give financial advice, but I do tell people what I think and kind of what I gather from my experience, from our business, from what have you. And being pretty aggressive that the price of meat was going to go up and going to go up aggressively. That the price of food, the price of foodstuffs, that, 2 years ago we started this. A year ago, especially on the meat, it was clear to me what was happening. Well, it's even clearer now. And I've been pretty darn accurate. Have I got everything right? Generally speaking, yeah, I pretty much have. Maybe some of the specifics been off, whatever. Timing is very hard to predict in any of these businesses. To give you an example, talking to one of our suppliers, I think I've told this story before, but it bears repeating. Our supplier of meat, our freeze-dried meat that we use for our products, came to us a while ago and said, we can't give you an accurate time of delivery and we cannot predict or give you a accurate price. Well, geez, besides that, I mean, what do you need to run a business? I mean, I don't know. I mean, how do you run a business when they tell you that? So I knew that these things were coming. And what we're seeing now, people have to understand what Russia means. And there's a few events that have happened. I think I'm going to be on a longer interview this week. I think we're going to do one, Dave, where I go into this more in depth. But two things I want to highlight that are extremely, extremely important. They seem distant. They seem disconnected. And for the better part of, how many years, certainly as long as I've been alive, America to some extent has been disconnected from the rest of the world. This is not the case anymore, and I'll explain these two things explain why. Russia is known, and Ukraine, that area, Crimea, all that area, is known as the breadbasket of Europe, certainly. It's also a huge energy area. America only gets about 3% of their oil from Russia, but they're making diesel go up crazy, go figure, whatever. Kind of a engineered price disaster to me, but that's beside the point. Russia is, without question, a vital, vital cog for Europe and for the third world, for energy and for food. Vital. When these sanctions occurred, you saw America come up with sanctions. Last week, you saw Biden admit what I've been telling you for a year plus, that food shortages are coming. He said this right out in a press conference. He told you this, and that this would help us tighten our belt and help the green movement and what have you, and blah, 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 blah. You can go listen to it. It is a seminal moment in where we're at in America. And I don't mean seminal in a good way. I mean, this is a key moment. Russia and Europe. Europe is on the verge of a much worse time probably than we're going to have in the United States. Not that we're going to have a easy ride. The energy demands, the food demands, especially the third world. Now, you have to understand that most of the world lives on about less than or somewhere around $1 a day for food. The majority of the world, I mean, think about that. The majority of the population of the world lives on about $1 a day of food. So when you have the price fluctuations that we're talking about, when I say meat goes up 50%, and we've seen that, well, you just took meat right out of their diet, unless they're lucky enough to live on a farm and they may have something, but even that's getting, you have vandals and you have whatever. When you see, when they are that unstable, when they are that on the edge, when you see these price increases, you go into a realm, and there's been lots of studies about this. The United Nations, they have a number about 50%. When you spend about 50% of your income on food, then revolution is imminent. That's kind of a metric they've had for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. Well, now a big part of the third world is at that threshold or actually has exceeded it. So that's telling us that some sort of revolution, upheaval, whatever word you want attached to it, in the third world is imminent. And it's because of food. The Russia situation, the energy situation, they all exasperate this. Now, one of the key stories, if not the key story, of the Russia, whatever you want to call it, crisis, invasion, whatever word you put on it, the key story that I don't hear many people talking about is that Russia ran into the arms of China, that Visa, MasterCard, American Express abandoned Russia, the SWIFT system, part of the sanction, abandoned Russia,
right?
And Russia, go ahead, Dave. Do you want to get in there?
Keep going, Dan. No, you're right. Keep going.
Russia ran into the arms of Union Pay, which is run by the Chinese government. I want you to put this story with the story out of Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabia is considering, if they're saying this, I mean, they're going to do it or about to do it. They're about to or are doing a situation where they will accept Chinese purchases in yuan, the Chinese dollar, or the Chinese equivalent of the dollar. What does that mean? This is a seismic. I cannot overestimate the seismic shift that is happening, being disguised by this Russian invasion on the economic front. And it is the biggest economic story in the world because the dollar-dominated matrix that we have lived in since World War II, the end of World War II, and the benefit that we have received from it, the advantage that we have received from it. So every country has to have dollars for the last, 80 years almost, 70-plus years. They've had to have dollars to buy oil, to pay for most loans, to do business. They had to have dollars. So what you're seeing now is Russia, China, the two biggest economic forces besides the United States. I guess if you count European Union as one, whatever, so that's the other, is abandoning the dollar very rapidly. And this isn't just talk anymore. What does that mean? That means you're wondering about inflation. America is now competing for goods on a global scale. And the dollar that we have had, which has had a preferred position in the world, is now being knocked down a notch or two or three, or who knows where it'll land. I don't know. And now it's competing, and the world doesn't need it anymore. What does that mean? That means it will cost, you can write this down, it will cost more dollars to buy everything that you need and consider valuable. That's my thought. That's my prediction. That's my experience. You asked me for my opinion. You asked me for my experience. This is all coming to fruition. The Bill Gates recently said, well, the world needs to go to 100% synthetic beef. He also said that another virus is coming. It's not if, but when. I mean, you start to believe these people after a while, right? Because they tell us these things, the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. So you ask me where are we at. You're asking me why this is important. And how does this relate to food? How does this relate to food storage? I will tell you my opinion. I believe probably the next 6 months, give or take, I would say, and generally speaking, are going to be the most fortuitous, the best that you will see in the United States probably for a decade. That would be my prediction. I would say that food, virus on the horizon, possible virus, the shock to supply, the energy. There's a saying, cheap energy equals prosperity. Energy ain't cheap no more, ladies and gentlemen. We can thank Russia's part of that, but let's be honest. The Biden administration policies have been hell-bent on shoving the green movement down our throat. We got enough coal the last 300 or 400 years, but we need to switch to electric cars all of a sudden.
Well, Dan, India is cutting a side deal with Russia to bypass the dollar. You mentioned about Saudi Arabia doing a deal with China for oil. You mentioned about how Russia and China have activated their bypass to the credit card system and to the SWIFT system. When Biden tried to call Saudi Arabia in the past week and a half and the United Arab Emirates, nobody answered the phone at those two ends. Meanwhile, they were having conversations with Russia and Putin.
Absolutely.
And you're right, Dan. You're right. You see, this war, and people are dying, and destruction is occurring. But this war, the real war that's occurring, is who is going to control the financial world after this Russia-Ukraine war. And is it going to be the Putin-Xi axis that splintered? They're both globalists, Putin and Xi, but they have splintered off of the Schwab-Soros World Economic Forum axis. Who's going to control it? And now we have the Russian foreign minister this week talk about, yeah, you know what? If you want to buy our stuff, you can, Putin initially said, yeah, you can pay us in rubles. And this guy said, you can pay us in rubles or you can pay us in gold. But you're not going to pay us in dollars. Dan, what you have outlined are the seeds that are going to grow very big and sprout some really nasty plants that's going to lead to huge inflation in the United States because the dollar is going to lose its reserve currency status.
You described in 30 seconds. You just described the crux of this, and people listening. And this is my opinion. I'm not trying to give financial advice. I have to look at this from a business standpoint. My own family. I'm an American. Obviously, I'm a patriot. This is monumental, ladies. This is like in my lifetime. I don't know if there's anything that will be more impactful than what Dave just outlined. What I've been talking about this whole interview. There is nothing economically, socially, the ramifications of this that will affect you more than what we are about to see. That what has just been activated. There is no way for me to overestimate and on the other side to fully explain to you what that means. We have such a normalcy bias and such a basis of favored status here in the United States and blessing of God or whatever you want to say it is in the United States. Economically, it's about to go bye-bye. And I'm not, I mean, you interject, please, Dave. I'm rambling now. I'm not overestimating what I'm saying, am I?
No, I don't believe you are. And in fact, hey, listen, Dan, this week, Biden was, when they had emergency summit of NATO heads. This from Zero Hedge. Biden casually says food shortage, quote, going to be real, end quote, as a necessary price of the anti-Russia sanctions. Speaking at an emergency summit of NATO heads, making somewhat overly casual sounding references regarding likely massive energy and food shortages, Biden stated, quote, "It's going to be real. The price of the sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well," end quote. He's demented. I get it. But you know what? Occasionally he hears something at a meeting and he goes off the teleprompter and he's so short-circuited he can't, and his filters are so messed up, he'll say something that he heard at a classified meeting that, by the way, nobody talk about this in public, all right? And he will occasionally say something like this.
I told you really, this is, okay, I'm not trying to tell you what to do in your life, ladies and gentlemen. Here's what I'm doing. Here's the way I'm looking at it. I'm looking at that I have 6 months. I have 6 months where things will be, yes, we're going to have gas price increases, what have you. Things may be a little, but I'm going to have 6 months to prepare and to make decisions that are going to affect me for the next decade, because everything is happening will affect you for the next decade and beyond. The economic direction of your life is being set right now. They have told you over and over again that they want a great reset. They have told you that they want you to own nothing, but that you'll be happy in doing it. They've told you that other viruses are coming. They've told you you can't eat meat in it. They've told you. At what point do we believe them? At what point do we at least take it on face value? I am so. I don't even know what to say, Dave. I can see this. I can feel this. Every time you go to the grocery store, ladies and gentlemen, if you buy one bag of rice, usually, please buy 3. If you buy a can of tuna fish, please buy 3. If you buy whatever it is, buy more now if you are able. You can't lose. The price of food is going up, not to mention the availability. I can't even give you an accurate estimate on the availability of food in the future. It's so in question. The price, I forgot to mention, Dave, the biggest thing about the food, and it comes to the United States, where do we get most of our fertilizer? From Russia.
Yeah, true.
From Russia. What has the price of fertilizer done over the past 6 months? Oh, it's doubled. About 100%, actually about 125%, depending on which fertilizer. 100% give or take. What does that do to farmers? Farmers have a choice, and I've talked to them.
That's right.
I'm not just pulling this out of the air. I have talked to literal farmers who have told me we are now making the decision if we're going to go back to the old style of farming where we just do the best we can and the yield is what it is and we just kind of rely on God, or do we use all the products and all the chemicals and all the things to help boost yield? We're making that decision, and we're probably looking at going towards the old style. What does that mean? Well, they're not going to pay the overprice for fertilizer, but what it also means is their yield is going to be probably 50%. And you have a whole world which is demanding. And mark my words, the third world, you are going to see starvation like you haven't seen since, you remember the mid-'80s?
Yep.
You know, we are the world. That's what it'll be like, probably exponential of that. And you'll see migration from it. And you'll see population movement. And you'll see instability from it. And in the United States, you're going to have to make choices because your dollar, are you going to buy food? Are you going to have your power on? Because all this is going up. They are resetting you, ladies and gentlemen. They are resetting us.